All right, hey guys, today we're going to talk about rug pulls. Oh, wait. Ugh. Sorry about that. Still had my helmet on from our moon mission. Like I said, today we're going to talk about rug pulls. You've probably heard this term in the DeFi space and people trading a lot of these tokens. It is a concept that basically means you got scammed or screwed or the book fell out under you. We're going to talk about what it actually means and how to be on the lookout for rug pulls and some of the risks in trading this stuff. This is a risky space. If you're trading on Uniswap or Mooniswap or Balancer or staking on these platforms with these crazy scams and schemes going on, you need to be careful. You need to know what you're getting into and try to steer away from, the worst of it. All right, so essentially a rug pull in the parlay, the common term, what it's really representing is that someone goes to these liquidity pools, which is how the buying and the selling occurs, and they are essentially ripping out all of the Ethereum at once by overwhelming the supply of the token side. So let's look at the potential for a real world scenario and what can happen. Okay, so here we have the hot dog token. And you see here, this was one that people were like, oh, this is the next Sushi or Kimchi or whatever the heck is going on today. And everything looks great. Oh, look, people are doing this. And then after a little while, it's just like, bam, the person tanks it. So how were they able to do this? How is this possible? It's really actually pretty straightforward. Every time you interact with one of these, you are interacting with a smart contract. In these smart contracts, the absolute dumbest of these are going to have something like this that's a mint function. And what that means is they can actually mint new tokens at their leisure whenever they want to. And they can overwhelm the pool itself. So each of these pools has an amount of liquidity. Now, the hot dog token has $115,000 there still, and it's had $435,000 of volume. So this really didn't have that much going on that I can tell. This is just one example. Some of these can get much bigger, much crazier, and people don't know whether it's good or not. Sushi was one just the other day. And let's see, I think Noodle is another one that's a scam. And, you go on these websites and they promise you 30,000%. APY. So I don't even know what that multiple is. Basically, you're making all your money in like an hour or something. Underlying these promises where you have to deposit a token that's, you're essentially locking your liquidity. So they're forcing you into the liquidity pool, giving you the LP token, the liquidity pool token. And then now that your stuff is all in the pool, then they rip it out from under you. Okay. Let's go back to it. So when these get really hyped up like Sushi did, so I'm not saying Sushi's a scam, I actually don't think it is, but people didn't know at first until it had some information and some audit stuff come in. Massive amounts come in. $158 million worth of liquidity is in here. Half of that is in Ethereum. So there's like $75 million worth of Ethereum in this right now. And when it was earliest on, maybe there was 10 million, 12 million, 15 million. And if the Sushi creator wanted to rug pull it, then they would have essentially been able to get all of that. The reason is when you go in here to participate on the staking platforms, you have to come in and you have to add your own liquidity. So if you're going to add 2 Ethereum worth of hot dog, you also have to put in 2 Ethereum to the liquidity pool, because when people are buying and selling, think of it like 2 wells. There's a water well and there's a wine well, and the liquidity pool is essentially serving water or wine to each person that comes to the table and says, hey, I want water, or hey, I want wine. But then they have this mandate to maintain this 50-50 balance between water and wine. And the normal cycle of this is people that are arbitraging between pools or between centralized exchanges and other things like that. They are the ones making this more efficient, keeping it 50-50, keeping the price in line. Where this can go wrong is when someone comes in with something like this, and what the developer does, let's say, enough people just went through this process. They took the liquidity pool tokens that they got and they went and they staked them. They farmed them by staking them on one of these sites. Okay. And then when they do that, they've now lured in a certain amount of liquidity. Let's say they lured in $1 million worth of liquidity. Well, that means there's $500,000 in one of those pools, the water and the wine. They want the wine, which is the Ethereum. The water is their token, which is in their knowledge and their knowledge alone aplenty, because they can mint it. Like we talked about in these contracts where there might be a time lock on that mint function. That mint function might be restricted to only be able to be called in certain scenarios that would adjust the supply. You don't necessarily know that. You don't necessarily know how these work. In general, if there's a mint function or anything that can mint tokens, you want to be careful. You want the contract to have been audited. You want to be able to be relatively assured that they're not just able to go mint a whole bunch of new tokens. When you first get interested in hot dog, you may say, oh, look, there's 10 million hot dogs. That's all the hot dogs there's ever going to be. And therefore you account, okay, well, what's the market cap based on this? Yada, yada, yada. All this fundamental stuff that really nobody's paying attention to. So why even bother? What happens though is then they can say all at once, after they get that $1 million of liquidity, after, this number gets built up, then they say, okay, I'm going to call that mint function. Now I'm going to mint 10 billion new hot dogs. And then the developer, they go in there and they hit trade and they say, okay, I am going to take my, now 10 billion hot dogs and I'm going to get whatever Ethereum is left. I'm going to siphon the wine by supplying it with the water. So I'm going to give all these hot dogs that I just minted, and I'm going to extract whatever Ethereum exists left in this pool, any ability that I have to steal everything. And that's what they're going to do. They're going to turn all the slippage stuff, all that's going to go away. They're going to take as much as they can, and the result is what you get in these charts where it goes to zero because they're overwhelming the liquidity pool. That is the most basic and also nefarious way a rug pull works, is they are pulling the rug out from under the people that are participating in this contract and trading it, whatever, back and forth and staking for it. There are so many red flags, though. Number one, if you don't know anything about this project, if it just popped up out of nowhere. Number two, does the smart contract have an audit? If it doesn't have an audit, does it have, sketchy functions in it, like can they mint tokens within the contract? And then number three is being on the lookout for any network activity that's really weird or whatever. And you just got to know when you're participating in this that it's very risky. Oh, and number four, kind of the obvious. If you see something promising, something like 30,000 APY, the only way for that to occur is that this token is being inflationed. There's inflation occurring on this token to infinity, and it's basically a race of hot potato, and whoever gets out last is the loser, that kind of thing anyway. So be very concerned about that in every scenario, even if it is, for instance, what was it that I had up here? Sushi. Even if it's Sushi, if Sushi has this crazy APY, well, just know that price might be difficult to sustain as well. There's no real free lunch around here. Somebody's going to get left with that bag. Now, that is kind of the basic idea of a rug pull, but it is not the only way to go take a bunch of Ethereum out of one of these liquidity pools. The other way is just at the very beginning, a select few people who maybe their cost basis is really, really low. So at this time, a hot dog is worth $441. Well, let's say there was a way for an early investor or a team member to get hot dog back when there was no liquidity, but they were just kind of collecting it, or they got it as part of a sale or like a pre-sale. Well, maybe they got it for 5 cents or $1 or something like that. Well, any price is good for them, and they are willing, and if they're capable of taking all of their tokens and just slamming the liquidity pool, then they'll take as much Ethereum as they can. It's profitable to them because they're like at 1,000x of whatever they paid for it, or they got the tokens for free because they were an advisor or a team member or the developer, whatever else. Those end up having the same effect as something that had a mint function or something like that. So people will use a lot of terms for a rug pull. The other is just a normal liquidity event. So something happens, and let's use an example for this. One of these tokens, I think it was the Kimchi token, one of the staking pairs, when you go to these sites, they're all basically the same. One of the staking pairs was that you could stake with Tend and Ethereum, I think, for the Kimchi one. And I don't think Kimchi is a scam. I think they're actually just a person that had a lot of Tend, then they wanted to pump it up. So by providing it as one of these pairs, then you go to Tend. Well, Tend went way up. And as soon as the thing started to collapse, as Kimchi started not being so cool anymore. So let's go look at Kimchi. So as soon as, kind of the gig was up, you just had this constant bleed. This is where everybody's hyping it. Everybody's hyping it. Oh, this is so cool. And then it's like, oh, no, this is bleeding so badly. Oh, no. Oh, no. Okay, so now once you get to this point, people are just getting out of there for whatever price they can get, and they're piecing out. They just minted a ton of these things, thousands of Kimchi overnight because it had this huge APY. They got all these free Kimchi. They pulled out their Ethereum. They pulled out all the Kimchi that they staked for, and they just go hammer it. So not only are they putting significant price pressure on Kimchi itself, they're also going to put sell pressure on whatever liquidity pool they were using to stake it. So if you were using, let's see in this one doesn't have any real big ones. Let's see if I can find the Kimchi website. Kimchi.finance. Yeah. Okay. So if they were using Kimchi here, and they were using Kimchi and Tend. So if Tend was offering the best APY, well, now they might go in there and just say, well, I'm out. Now I'm selling the Kimchi and I'm selling the Tend, and boom, massive sell pressure. Because in addition to everything else, it's not like Tend had a ton of liquidity itself. So it has $817,000 worth of liquidity, but Kimchi had like $50 million worth of volume. And notice the volume through Tend was like $15 million. So if you have $15 million of volume flowing through under $1 million worth of liquidity, the amount of slippage that you're going to get, the amount of sell pressure and buy pressure on the way up, sell pressure on the way down is going to be absolutely massive. And it's going to have very strange effects on that market as a whole. And you can see here, Kimchi has 15 million of liquidity, $109 million of volume, and the Kimchi Tend pair was offering the best APY, so that's what people ran to. So obviously it had a big effect on, the underlying tokens that were part of that. If you see something crazy going on with your token, a lot of these pools are illiquid anyway, even though they're more liquid in some ways than illiquid pairs on centralized exchanges. But people will use a term like rug pull or getting scammed or whatever, different verbiage that's really being created almost in real time. They'll use different verbiage to express things. But I hope that today what we did was kind of show you what the importance of liquidity on a project is and why you should pay attention to it. Now, we've seen this massive spike in liquidity on Uniswap.info, and we went from thinking $400 million of overall liquidity was high, and now we're sitting at 1.8 billion. And we went from 150, 200 million in volume to over 950 million in volume. A lot of that was funneling through Sushi and other stuff. Maybe they're not scams. Like Sushi, I don't think is a scam. I think they're trying to undercut Uniswap. But then you have a Sushi, and then your Kimchi's can't come along. Maybe it's a little more ridiculous and degenerate, a little less legit, a little more for a purpose like pumping another coin they have like Tend. And then below that, then the worse and worse come, and you have the whatever these other ones were, noodle and hot dog. And people hear about sushi and they're like, well, I need in on this action. And so they're in for kimchi and they're like, oh, that worked great. And I'm in for noodle, and noodle's a scam. You're screwed. So be very careful when you're doing stuff like this, because it's your capital at risk. If you do these things, honestly, they're very dangerous. You shouldn't do them. If you do them, be so careful. Take out your initial as soon as you can, and kind of continuously get out. Don't buy into some of this stuff. Some of this is just completely absurd. This is what you see in bubble behavior, really towards the time where you need a severe correction in a lot of this stuff. Meanwhile, in addition to the stuff that gets super, super hyped, there's all the brand new things. And like, if you go to find out like what are the new listings, I have a Telegram channel that I'm in for this, and I think there are 939 new listings on Uniswap. I don't know, since the last time I cleared that, maybe a day ago. So hundreds and hundreds of these are being poured in there, and some of them will rug pull you for, honestly, almost nothing. They don't care. There's very little risk to them. They clone a project, they throw it on Uniswap, they do a couple of tricks with a handful of Ethereum to try to drive up the price, the volume, the interest, get people lured in. You go in there, you provide liquidity because it tells you got to do that to stake tokens and earn yield, whatever else, and then bam, they take it out from under you. Your Ethereum is gone, and you feel like a fool. You got rug pulled. Be careful out there. Don't fall for all the tricks. It's not worth it. There's a lot more realistic stuff. These are taking advantage of real things, real fascinating protocols. When I look at what's going on with some of the pool mechanics and the effect that this has on trading, it's super fascinating. If you ever see more than temporary yields, more than like 200-300 APY, it's insane. More realistic yields may have a tenure of months or something where it's 50 to 100 APY. Your yield in a year, in most instances, is way less than that. So if it looks too good to be true, it probably is. Hope you have a great one. Like and subscribe, all that stuff. Send this to your friends. Hope that explains something. None of this was financial advice. Don't take it as that, but do like this video. Talk to you later.